Hello, everyone. Welcome to Indie Game Business. We're here live talking about indie game communities. I'm Tim Cullings, Executive Director of Seattle Indies up in Seattle, Washington, here with some awesome folks from around the country who are managing their communities. Feel free to introduce yourselves. I'll start with Michael, going from top left on my screen at least.
Okay. Hey, I'm Michael Lee. I'm a board member of BitBridge, so we're a local indie game community here in Pittsburgh. I also help organize like the local game jam for Pittsburgh and am helping in general with a bunch of other indie initiatives, including working with Tim on the local game community organizers roundtable at GDC this year. I'll hand it off to, I guess, going in clockwise order, Kartik.
Hey everyone, I'm Kartik. I am an indie developer based out of Atlanta and also an organizer for ATL Game Devs, which is one of many communities in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area. We focus primarily on kind of hobbyist and indie um, event organizing. We do game jams, we do meetups, and we do online events. And I am excited to talk about community organizing. I'm going to pass it off to Kaylee.
Thanks. I'm Kaylee, a project manager based out of Chicago and director for Indie City Games. We also run in-person meetups, in-person game jams. We just started dipping our toes into pop-up showcases this past year. And we also started talking about grants this past year for people in the Chicago community.
Yeah, awesome. Glad to have you all here. Glad to see your faces again. Hope to see you in person soon. Uh, so yeah, let's start with why did you get involved in community organizing? Let's start with Kaylee, I guess.
Yeah. So I've been community organizing since college. I think I started it just to meet some more folks in my program. And then it sort of just trickled on into the pandemic as a way for me to, stay socially connected to people. And then my board grew to what it is now. And now I just like to keep it going and meet some cool people. And it definitely feels like a necessity for the Chicago community and even the community these days, for, people in layoffs and all that fun jazz. It's a nice area for people to still practice their skills and meet other people in the same position.
Yeah, absolutely. Wondering what your story is, Kartik.
Yeah, as an introvert, I feel like I got into community organizing as an excuse to get myself out there and be social more often. Like nowadays, the monthly IRL meetup that we host is like the thing that I reserve the most social battery for once a month. Be like, okay, look, I'm gonna go out and meet a bunch of people. I'm gonna like host a bunch of people. That was part of it. The other part of it was also just kind of a bit of a selfish desire when I was in college. I felt like there were a variety of communities in the Atlanta area, but a lot of them were very focused on very kind of commercial, very kind of for-profit motivations. And I, as just primarily a hobbyist, primarily just a passionate developer that likes games for game's sake, art for art's sake, wanted to create something that was a bit more kind of hobbyist appealing and something that was less like, oh, let's link up on LinkedIn, and a little bit more just, hey, here's a cool thing I'm making. Let me see the cool thing you're making. And from there, we kind of grew into what we are now, which is a little bit bridging the gap between hobbyist and indie, and then just very, very lightly into the professional realm, but mostly on the hobbyist and indie side. And I've been doing it for about 5-6 years now. So it's been a fun journey so far.
And I guess I'll round things out, Tim, with
Yeah, go ahead.
and then so yeah, I similar to other people, I've been sort of on and off organizing like small game jams and such, but since college. But when I got to Pittsburgh, we had and I was here for school and then continued on for work. We had a couple of game studios, but we didn't have really any indie game community, even though I knew there were people, both indie game devs and hobbyists and students, were all in the scene. So basically, me and a couple of other people who are in the area, we just said we should just have a meetup just to share experiences, work together, and encourage each other. And from there, it grew pretty rapidly because we found out that a lot of people are make a lot of people we didn't even know about were working in indie games and doing cool things. And so from there, we started doing monthly meetups, game jams, and then working with the other organizations like the local IGDA chapter for Global Game Jam and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's definitely similar stories to what I have of. I was I found myself like excuse me, out of work about 10 years ago. Got connected to the local communities here, like IGDA, and Seattle Indies was already a thing that was happening when I started going to the meetups, and yeah, just found people that I connected with and bonded with, and they sort of kept me connected to the community while I was needing, that connection, looking for work and stuff, and just got involved in organizing events, and it kind of just snowballed from there into turning it into a full-fledged nonprofit that we've been running since 2016, and that's just like had kind of like expansive growth since COVID like restarted, like or after after we came out of the pandemic, and people were just excited to get back together again in person, and so yeah, it's just been growing since there. Just wondering what keeps you all motivated to keep going, and like how do you manage your own burnout in terms of managing all this stuff.
Not to interrupt, but Tim, you're incredibly hard to hear.
Hello, is that better? Hello?
Oh, that actually went the opposite.
Which is that better?
Yeah, that's so much better. Thank you.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry about that. All right, yeah. As I said, what keeps people motivated, and how do you manage your burnout? Anyone?
I would love to take this question as someone who is sick for the entire month of November from burnout from doing community things. We had our first big showcase in the beginning of November, which really blew up, and we had a much larger attendance than we expected. And because of that, every single Sunday, I found myself very sick, and I am not normally someone who was sick. So I was like, this is very odd. So I experienced my first like physical burnout, which was really a lot to process. But honestly, the thing that keeps me coming back, other than my board members and us, taking time to take a step back and being like, okay, what we did was really nice. We want to keep this momentum going, but how can we take care of our mental and physical health is the community. Just people don't even need to really be thankful for the work that we're doing, but people constantly show up, and people are making their own friends and their own games and their own like micro communities within our community, which is really rewarding to see, especially as someone who isn't the most social like Kartik. Like I have to save up on my social batteries for our big events like that. And it's very nice that we don't have to handhold our community as much as we used to in the beginning. We can sort of just let people into a room with some cool things, and they get to like take it and go wild on their own. But interesting to hear about how other people have dealt with their burnout.
Yeah, well, we'll keep the order going as we've had it, I guess. And yeah, I'll kind of piggyback off of what you were saying about the kind of micro communities and just kind of letting people into a room and letting them just kind of basically just letting them loose and letting them kind of form their own kind of social bonds and interpersonal connections. I've been finding that personally very inspiring and motivating to keep going. Anytime I usually feel like the day after any event or the day after any time we organize something, I always feel a little bit, I don't think I've experienced burnout to the extent that you've described, Kaylee, for this, organizing part of my life, but it definitely feels a little bit like, oh, okay, I can't believe I have to do that again in a month. But then by the time a month rolls around, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm ready to do this again because I can't wait to see that same thing happen once more, where you just kind of host an event, whether online or in person, and you just see people who are otherwise a little bit maybe disconnected from other game developers and other artists coming together. And I love that when we have our IRL meetups, I'll see like, okay, here's the 2D artists have all just gathered into a corner and have broken out their sketchbooks and they're just sharing the sketches they've done in the past month. That brings me joy and motivation, seeing different special interest groups. Myself and some other friends were all interested in Souls likes as a genre, and so we often find ourselves in a corner just talking about Dark Souls and Elden Ring, and so it's fun just kind of seeing how the different groups all combine and mix and mingle. And that's what I find that inspiring and motivating every month. I'm just excited to create that opportunity for people again. What about you,
Yeah,
Michael?
yeah, it's a great question, and you know, one thing I think, like Kayla, you mentioned like the other board members or other people helping out, and I think one thing we found that's worked really well. So we have like a core group of 4 board members and what I'd call like a few super volunteers who are willing and happy to take leadership. And so what we try to do is we try to like hand off events. So sort of, alternate between leadership versus core. Now, obviously sometimes it doesn't work. People get sick, people miss because of work or real life issues. And, you know, sometimes you just got to pull double duty. And I sometimes have hit that point, like while Kartik was talking, it's like you just like after events, like, oh man, I'm ready to just like call it and I don't want to do this anymore. But I think the important thing there is like I've had like it's like for example, this year's we did our Pittsburgh Global Game Jam, and that was one of the larger ones we've done with like we had like 142 people, and it was like especially because it's the 48-hour Global Game Jam, that's like an entire weekend, so it's not just like one day in and out. And last year, I could definitely feel I was getting burned out on running that. So I, I was really proactive this year on recruiting a successor organizer, basically. And she, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, she was like, oh, I know all the work that went into and I want to do it, but I'm a little uncertain. And so we worked out, it's like, hey, why don't we co-organize this year and see how you feel about it? And that went, uh, thankfully, that went really, really awesome. And so, what one thing I've thought about a lot is like, as our organization, and I'm sure everyone else, as they've been growing, you're thinking about long terms, like, oh, you can't be necessarily the person in charge forever. And what does that look like in terms of leadership handoff and making sure processes and the community sticks together even after you like need to step down because of burnout or just because of work or because you know we've had people who are here and they were really great and they had to move away, and all of that stuff is the kind of thing that keep me up at night as an organizer. Sorry, that went a little long, but I'll hand it back to Tim to finish the loop here.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really good points. Like this year for Global Game Jam here in Seattle, I tried to like hand that off to other people who were excited to step up and take it on, and like I did kind of just the behind the scenes buying supplies and clean up and kind of like less intense work. Um, but yeah, I mean, one of the like problems, if you will, with being successful is that people like want more all the time. Like they want more events, they want more, more of your time, more volunteer time. So like that's something that we've definitely dealt with here. But fortunately, like along with that has come people who've wanted to step up and volunteer to run events. So we kind of just like enable that as best we can. Like if they're excited to host something and they have an idea, like we tell them just like find a place to do it, maybe try it once or twice and see like what the momentum is like and how many people show up for that thing. And if it seems like it's going to be a regular thing, then we'll like make it an official event under our meetup group and give them. We have like a whole kit of like signs and name tags and all that kind of stuff that we give organizers, so it looks like an official thing when people show up. But yeah, like I've hit sometimes where I've just burned out pretty hard and uh, tried to separate out our like bigger events, so they're maybe like once a quarter, so I'm not like running full speed all the time. Uh, but yeah, like Kaylee managed grants, and I've gotten a lot more into doing that lately, and that takes up a ton of my time and work. And I mean, it's great, but there's also a lot of management and stuff that goes into it. I see some people in chat like asking about how they find their local group, or maybe they don't have a group in their area. Wondering if any of you can like maybe give some advice for people who want to start a community, or like how you went about doing that in your area.
I guess I could jump in because it's sort of interesting the way I mentioned we got started because we were looking for other indie game developers, and it was like, oh, there's got we started off initially like about 5 or 6 of us, and we knew there were other people in the area too, just from working through the universities and just even because when I was here, I was working with at Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, we have a few game studios, and then it shrunk down to one game studio professionally, Shell Games, and now it's thankfully expanded again to a couple of game studios. Hopefully, fingers crossed with the state of the industry nowadays. But um, we so we started by just honestly asking friends. We didn't even do any of the online stuff in hindsight that we should have done, where it's like, oh, what if we start a meetup group, or just go to other organizations and ask about it. We did the most cursory search, and we're like, let's just meet up and we'll tell people and we can hang out and we'll start a Discord server. And that was sort of it. And in our case, that actually ended up working well because just organically we started growing. We could feel that people were excited about it. And then that was when we also did the thing where this is actually, I think, a big part of Tim, how we met is like, I just started reaching out to uh, different indie groups and from other cities I knew about. So I knew like Seattle Indies, and then uh, talking with like the Portland Indie, the Pig Squad, and then there was oh my goodness, the St. Louis indie group. They're doing Pixel Pop for a while, and then Glitch
Mm-hmm.
City and all those guys, and just like, hey, how did you guys get started, and how did you guys work on your indie game scene? And we got a lot of useful advice, and that sort of gave us the confidence to keep on rolling forward with this. We in hindsight, there's a lot of things we didn't do correctly, which is like we didn't start like an actual organization. But I think on one hand, it's like, oh, we do things differently, but it did keep it casual. It kept it really easy to get going, and that way people didn't get stressed out. It feels like, oh, this is going to be a thing from the start. But yeah, I'm really curious how like everyone else got started, especially because you guys are all in what I'd say like bigger cities than Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a great point about how kind of stressful it can be when you try to start everything all at once, so to speak. Like we had a similar story of just, well, our story is a little bit weirder, I guess, because technically our community is a rebrand slash weird zombie growth out of the old Unity Atlanta meetup group, which was like officially organized through like meetup.com, which helped a little bit at the start. I kind of was lucky to inherit a little bit of a social network that already existed there. But as more and more people kind of came to our group, and more and more people were asking like, hey, what, I don't work in Unity, but I really want like what y'all have here, but there's not enough people working in Godot yet, or there's not enough people working in Pico 8 yet for me to have my own little sub community. Is it okay if I come to your meetup? And I was just like, yeah, sure, come on by. Like, we're not going to close the door in your face. Like, show off whatever you're making. And then after a little while, we just had such a diverse group of developers that it didn't really make sense for us to be called the Unity group anymore. And so I feel like if you're, I think to kind of touch back on the initial question, if you're like feeling like there isn't a community nearby for what you're trying to do, um, like Michael said, the worst you can do is hit up at least one or two other friends who are interested in the same thing as you. Hopefully, there's at least one or two other people you can reach out to and start finding a place to meet. And for me, I think the biggest thing that helped us grow, which, you know, one of the things I'm most proud of with our community is that we don't really do a whole lot to advertise or like outreach or grow in the way that a traditional group would. We just accrue people on account of the fact that we are just incredibly consistent. We are always once a month IRL meetups at the same place, and people just kind of word of mouth realize, oh yeah, that's happening again this month. That's happening again this month, and we keep getting new faces and new people coming by. And I think that kind of slow growth where you don't try to dive headfirst into 501c3 organizing before you even know that you have a community yet. Don't try to dive headfirst into, oh, we got to have a Discord, we got to have a logo, we got to have this. Like, all those things are cool and nice, but none of that matters unless you have a a reliable core group that's going to come up and show up every month or however frequently you want to do your events. Yeah, I'd say, there's always an opportunity. There's always people interested in what you're trying to do nearby. I always find it funny whenever we have new people who come by our meetup and they're just like, I didn't know there were other game developers in the state of Georgia. And I'm just like, oh wow, we're going to introduce you to so many people. Get ready, it's going to be a great time. But yeah, Kaylee, I'm curious about your experience with this as well.
Yeah, we also had like a weird abnormal start where we kind of existed beforehand, and then it, in classic fashion, people get older and waves of community organizing comes and goes without someone to inherit it. So I was sort of just left with Indie City Games, and then there was a huge boost of people wanting to meet up again in person, which kind of reignited us. But to the question of trying to find communities, online game jams, I feel like are a really great way to also get involved and find people in your local area. Like Indie City Games is not closed to Chicago or Midwest specific people. Like we have some people in like Asia that have like joined our game jams and are still really active in our Discord. So that's always a really good way to find things. I like itch.io. I feel like it's a great way to find things like that. But as a community organizer, I also try to be in other groups' Discord. So if we have people that are moving to Seattle or moving from to Seattle, I'm like, here's this Discord you can join. I'm not very active in it. I don't know how active they are, but like these people do exist. So hopefully you can find someone there to meet up with. But yeah, I feel like online game jams are a great foot in the door to just, I don't know, find a Discord server, see where people live, not in a creepy way, and hopefully meet up with them.
Yeah, totally. And I know Mike and I both have experience with IGDA. I used to run the IGDA Seattle chapter. I'm on the IGDA board currently. That's a good way to get started. Like if you're just starting your community, they're a good resource to help you with that. They have all the infrastructure that you need to really get a chapter going, and you don't have to start an organization or a nonprofit. You just have to like agree to some of their rules and follow the way that they have, their structure. But they have a really good support system if you're just a small group and you're getting started. And that's another way to find devs in your area. Like the first thing I normally do if I go traveling around places is I'll look to see if there's an active IGDA chapter there, or I'll see if there's a GDJ site nearby, and I'll hit up those folks and see if they want to get together when I'm in town. So I traveled around a bunch when I used to be the executive director of Global Game Jam, and got to meet people in communities all over the world. Like the four of us are all U.S. based, but there's also great communities in Latin America and Europe, and really all over that are doing similar things. And it's not just here in the U.S., so you can find people just like you. I see some talk about GammaCon in the chat, which I went to a couple years ago down in Mexico, and that was a lot of fun, and I got to meet a lot of Mexican developers. So there's people in indie dev communities all over the place. And yeah, I would recommend, as everyone said, like start small and grow from there. Like consistency is key. Like Kartik mentioned, we also have our big meetup on the same time at the same place every month, and people know to show up on the third Tuesday, which was just a couple nights ago here in Seattle, and uh, we get like close to 100 people a month that come out to that. But you can also, it doesn't have to be that big. If it's 10 people, 5 people, whatever, you have to start somewhere and grow from there. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
and I
wondering. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Oh no, and when people are talking about like having uh the different kind of events, I think like yeah, consistency obviously like meeting up on a schedule where people are knowing, oh, if I come and I come like next month, like one thing I've seen with people is like they are maybe too aggressive, or it's like, oh, we should meet up every week, or we should have like a
Hmm.
weekly work session. I was like, whoa, 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 you know, you want to, you obviously want to be excited, enthusiastic, but you also want to make sure, like, because it's not only a time investment on you as an organizer. You got to think it's a time investment on the people who are coming, and so you want to make sure, like, obviously it's like if your community is interested in doing weekly work sessions and that sort of thing, that go for it. But you want to gauge and see like, oh, what is the community looking for, and also making sure, like, I feel like you need a mix of, one thing I've seen is like if every event is sort of like an intense event, it can tire people out really really quickly. So we do a mix of like events that are really chill, just like let's go hang out at a coffee shop and just chat about anything that's on your mind in terms of games or development. But we also have like, the more intense ones like the showcases or the feedback sessions where you are coming in with like an explicit purpose and you have people sign up. And I think alternating those and making sure people, you're not tiring out not just yourself, but the community is like really, really key to all of that.
Yeah, I think another benefit of having a variety of events is also meeting a variety of needs. I've noticed, like in our community, there are people who um, are uh, varying levels of comfortable with like IRL versus online, varying levels of comfortable with different levels of involvement. As I mentioned, when you're trying to appeal to the range between hobbyist and indie, like people have different needs, people have different desires. Like hobbyists aren't going to be as interested in like a talk about how to market and sell your game. That's more useful to an indie crowd, and vice versa. It's helpful, like Michael said, to have like a variety of events, but also, like Tim said, like you can't do all that by yourself, and you can't do all that right out the gate. It's taken us about like 5 years to reach the point where we are, where we have about 4 types of events a month, and it's only possible again because we grew there slowly, and I have like 3 other organizers that help me kind of manage all this. So it's definitely, it's very intimidating at first when you get into something like this. But I remember like one of the I don't know how to call it, one of the like original parts of what merged into the ATL game devs started as just like going over to a friend's apartment and just like 4 or 5 indies just sitting in a circle on the floor just chatting about game development. Like that's where we started, and now like we have a Discord of like over 1,000 people, which it's just kind of surreal when you see that growth, but it only happens slowly and through consistency.
Yeah, and that's kind of a similar story. Like we actually do a weekly co-working session now that we've had for a while. For a while, it was just like one person that was running it every week, but he now has a whole team of like 3 or 4 or 5, I forget how many, but they alternate who hosts every week basically, and that kind of takes some of the burden off. And yeah, that event gets like 30, 40 people a week now, which is like wild to me. But we kind of built an ecosystem of events to help people on their way of like the weekly co-working session is kind of where we tell people to start and work on their games and learn from each other, and then we do like a feedback session so they work on their game at the co-working, and then every month we have a show and tell, which is actually happening tonight over at the Niantic office. People are going to be bringing their games, and then they'll get feedback and go back and work on it some more, and that's kind of like the loop. And we have the socials every month, so people get a chance to just get away from their computers and talk. And then every year we do Seattle Indies Expo, which is our biggest event of the year, and that's kind of the aspirational event where people who've worked on their game all year get to submit to that and hopefully exhibit their game to the public. So that's kind of like how we have built our event cycle to work. Some people, are asking about online game jams and the chat, and there's definitely a lot on itch.io. If you go there, look under jams, there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of online game jams for all different themes and technologies and whatever you're looking for, and that's a great way to get connected to the community. So definitely, like, game jams is a really good starting point for a lot of people who are just like trying to see if making games is something that they want to try to do for real, and if like it tends to be like the proving ground. I mean, not like skills wise, but just like proving to yourself if you want to do it and keep going. And it's a great way to meet people and sort of get pushed outside of your comfort zone a little bit, keep going and meet people and make cool games. Yeah. So, what are some of the challenges that you all are facing right now in terms of like managing and growing your community and whatnot?
I mean, I think the whole industry as a whole is facing a lot of challenges right now. This goes without saying.
Put it lightly.
Oof.
But specifically, I think in some ways, like the overarching challenges of the industry are filtering down to the community level in the format of just when there's a relative lack of jobs or a lack of funding or a lot of layoffs. One of the amongst the many things that I try to do as an organizer is try to be, for lack of a better term, just like a bit of emotional support. Like, we're by no means a therapy group, but it helps a little bit to just have other people who are going through the same thing as you to talk to, but also to provide some kind of moral support to. There's of course the very like tangible, like financial and career support that people give to one another, whether it's sharing job postings, whether it's just being a part of a network so that, if and when, there are opportunities, people are eager to work with people who they are well connected in their own community. And so that's one of the ways that we're able to weather that storm. But also the other kind of interesting challenge that it results in, and I think everyone's kind of mentioned this a little bit, but like there's always kind of peaks and valleys over time as people kind of become more interested in certain things, less interested in other things. I'm noticing currently that like we're having a kind of a surge in hobbyist interest in game development. And so as an organizer, it's always a challenge to just kind of try to keep a pulse on what people are interested in and react accordingly to the kind of events that you're hosting and the nature of the events that you're hosting. We're slightly leaning away from the things that are a bit more kind of career focused and a little bit more like marketing focused, and just focusing a little bit more on, hey, you want to make a game? How do we get you to do that and not break the bank or break your mind in the process? So it's challenges are usually just a matter of rolling with the punches and reacting to the kind of needs that people have as the times change.
Yeah, I feel like echoing some of those things, even some challenges are just getting people, off the Discord server and like either in person or, yeah, you have this great game that you put on Steam, but how can, we as community organizers give you a platform to show it to other people, or maybe have funding for it for a little bit of a marketing stint or things like that. That's been one of our like big challenges lately. And Indie City has a zine that we publish every month that sort of highlights different developers and artists in the community, just to sort of give people another platform and a different media that's not digital, to talk about their work or practice pitching their game, or showing devlog stuff. So I feel like that's another hurdle, is just like, okay, you have this great game, let's do a little bit more with it. You deserve to be celebrated. How can we do that? But I'm curious about some of these like bigger events that you guys run. Have you guys run into any unique or non-unique hurdles about, doing these like big expos or big showcases, or even, Global Game Jam is quite a large feat to do every single year. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's it. Definitely the bigger, like similar to Tim, actually getting a lot of inspiration from Seattle and it's Pittsburgh. We have our big showcase, which we theme around Halloween, so we call it the Halloween Showcase. So it's both the game showcase and also sort of a Halloween party. And we encourage people to come dressed up in costumes, and it's all open to the public. It's completely free to enter, so because we want to it's like the big time where anyone can come in from the city and just sort of see. And we try to do it on a weekend in downtown, so people are just walking by and will just hop in. And those big showcases, they're great tentpoles. As I think Tim was saying, they're very aspirational for the community, especially a place like Pittsburgh. We're still growing as a organization, and we have what a lot of devs who I think are in that sort of in between where they are looking at like, oh, I'm working on my first indie game, or thinking of going full time indie, and I they're sort of starting the feeling out process. And we feel like this showcase is sort of like an important step towards that affirmation of like, hey, this is something I can really do. But yeah, organizing it, and one of the challenges we've been running into is like the event has gotten popular and we're sort of hitting the limits of our current event space, but we're now in that uncomfortable. I'm sure a lot of people run into this, that okay, we we had a really nice cozy small space that is great for our previous needs, and the next tier up is like a significant jump in terms of like organization, in terms of cost, which is always a big thing, in terms of like planning. And that's what we're actually trying to figure out right now, is like what, like, oh, if we go into like from like sort of what we call like this event venue to like the next step up, which is like we're talking hotel ballrooms, we're talking like potentially convention spaces. And it's like, oh, how's that going to look like? How do we get sponsors? How do we organize enough people to actually make sure it's worthwhile? Because now you got to fill out that space. And that has been a real challenge. And I'm actually really curious to hear from people who have done that, like Tim and others in this panel.
Yeah, you beat me to my question, which was uh, Kaylee mentioned the F word, which is funding, and like these events cost money, and like the bigger they get, the more money they cost. So like, yeah, how are you handling that? I mean, that was a big reason why we formed the nonprofit, was like companies like Microsoft were giving us sponsorship money, and like sending that to somebody's personal checking account is kind of sketchy a little bit. And like, how do they know that you're actually going to like use the money for what you say you're going to use it for, and not just like go on a vacation or something? But like, so yeah, that was a big reason why we did that. And plus, it makes their sponsorship donation that's tax deductible. So that's also like a valuable thing to have as a nonprofit organization. For us, funding wise, we have a Patreon that we run that brings in some money every month from our members and is optional for people who like can afford it. We do get like corporate sponsorships for our bigger events, like Seattle Indies Expo is pushing up towards like 50 grand in terms of like the total like budget that we're spending on that every year, to be transparent. And like we rely on a combination of like sponsorships and grants and a few individual donations, which we haven't really like done too much of yet. And then like, yeah, like I said, we're getting into bigger grant writing now, both by ourselves and with groups like-minded orgs in the city and region who we've built partnerships with, which I think has also been critical to our growth, is establishing relationships with other like arts focused orgs in the city. So I'm wondering how y'all have handled that.
So we haven't made the jump yet to nonprofit. It's something we've been talking about, and it's very, very relatable, Michael, what you're talking about as well, about the whole like feeling like you're just on the cusp of a different band of spaces. Yeah, I think unfortunately, like with a general lack of third spaces in most cities, it's really hard to find places that you can organize things like this on a bootstrap budget. We've been having decent luck with, thanks to being consistent and just being like very transparent with various businesses in the Atlanta area. We've gotten lucky that we have developed just like good relationships with like owners of certain like breweries and bars. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that we're kind of continuing the trend of a lot of games events being organized around alcohol-centric locations. It's something we're trying to move away from long term, but unfortunately or fortunately, depends on how you see it, they are the ones that are the most like communicative and easy to work with when it comes to, hey, do you want just a bunch of people to show up once a month at your location for some free business? And they are very receptive to that, so it makes it much easier to find venues that way. But yeah, no, it is a very common problem that a lot of communities face when they start to grow. Is like there's really nowhere to go unless you have the money to host that many people. And if you are running a good community, then you're constantly growing, and then you do have to eventually cross that barrier. I assume. I haven't seen anyone else do it not the nonprofit way, but I'm curious if Kaylee, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we are also a nonprofit, but myself and another board member actually met with the LA group, who is not a nonprofit right now, and I won't get into it or speak their own story, but it sounds like it's quite difficult for them to try to get sponsorship. But Indie City has a coffee, which is very similar to Patreon, where we like give rewards to people every single month based on how much they donate to us. But this year we're trying to take on a different approach just because our showcase was so large last year. We like outgrew the space immediately, and we ran it in a very cold month, even though it wasn't cold that day. So we're hoping to run a Kickstarter this year to hopefully get like a big influx of money and try to find a venue that's big enough to hold all of us. But a lot of our coffee money goes towards giving it back to the community, either like paying for speakers, or we just launched a micro grant that we're going to run every single year to have people like set up a Steam page or something like that, or use the money towards marketing for their game. So it is really difficult, and thankfully we can rely on older indie game studios that have spaces for us to go into. We've thought about reaching out to schools to see if they'll have us. But yeah, trying to find those third spaces is really tough, especially when you don't have a lot of money or even like an official organization to like, pour that money into. We've also had some people offer up their homes sometimes, which I am always very weary of, but not my not my bag of beans to share. But yeah, it all moves very fast, and it's all hard to try to figure out. And I feel like not one playbook is very helpful, but only if we had more third spaces in the world. Parks sometimes I feel like have a good free space, or like libraries. We rely on one of our library locations a lot for meetups, but again, who knows with our world, things are shifting so quickly.
Yeah, we've tried the parks and outdoor routes, which again are great for like casual hangouts and that sort of thing. Obviously, it's also contingent on where you live and weather and all that fun stuff. And so those are fun, like especially spring and summer events. The whole finding different third spaces, and I think like Kartik was saying, like we're also pretty bar heavy too, because again that tends to be the venues that are, as you say, have open space, can handle like a large influx of people, and also sort of don't mind it. We use coffee shops. We have used school libraries and venues before. One of the things that's useful is we have a bunch of universities like Carnegie Mellon and Pitt and Chatham University all in this area. And so thankfully we have like a couple of connections within those spaces. And so we're able to get reservations on occasion. And again, universities always have all other interesting challenges when you work with them, because there's a lot of regulations and rules and access and that sort of thing. But that definitely is a valuable option, especially if you have like we've worked with the student organization, student game clubs at those universities, and if you have a student or student organizer, it usually helps grease the wheels a lot more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. Having like somebody on the inside to help you with that is key. And those universities can tend to be like the ones that feed new members into your group as like people are going through those programs. They need to find that community or like that step in between from going from school to a professional career, and can sort of help people with the soft skills that they need that they might not learn in school to transition to professional life, or they meet people that they want to start a studio with, those kind of things. And yeah, like our main meetup is at a bar or like a brewery, because they have enough space for like 100 people to come in, but they don't mind that on a Tuesday night when there would be like 10 people in there. So it's a little give and take. But we also have tried to like move stuff away from being alcohol focused. We really only have one event a year, which is our holiday party that we both charge money for and has like access to hard alcohol. I think that's like one of the few events we do every year, and maybe Seattle Indies Expo sometimes has it. But yeah, and then our weekly meetup is at AIE, which is Academy of Interactive Entertainment, local like 2 year school for game devs. So we have a solid relationship with them. Um, I saw some folks asking about Latin America and events and jams going on down there, and I know there's communities all over in like Venezuela and Colombia and Peru and uh, many different Latin America. Brazil especially has like a super solid games scene. So if you're in any of those places, just check around on Google or whatever search engine you use and look for your local game devs. I'm sure you can find them in your area, and there's definitely like some really solid communities. And if you have a chance to go to GDC, definitely look around. Michael and I will be hosting a roundtable similar to what we're doing here today, where we're bringing together uh, indie community organizers on Friday at 11:30. If you're going to be there, join us up in person. We'll be there to chat about community organizing and love to meet you. Uh, yeah, I'm
Sorry,
wondering.
jumping in. I even feel
Yeah, go ahead.
like sorry, I feel like also going to other expos other than GDC, like Game
Yeah.
Devs of Color, other things like Pixel Pop in St. Louis used to be one that's not around anymore. But I've met a lot more people. I feel like at the smaller ones, and just uh, exploring those routes at all. Like if you have a game there, or if you're just going to like see a new city or something like that, I feel like those are also other great opportunities to meet other organizers or other communities that you can get involved with. It's really fun and special to see how those communities are different from maybe the one that you're in or one that you're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. I've like at least here and where I am, people other types of events want games and game developers at their events, like especially ones that are focused on students who are looking for career paths. Like we get reached out to by a lot of like unexpected and unrelated, like not game dev focused events that want us there to like talk about making games as a career and to show off games. So those like yeah, those are great places, and like Comic Cons and local conventions are a great place to meet folks and also like have your community there representing and showing their games. Like a lot of them are very accommodating, especially if you're a nonprofit, to have you come set up a booth and show off games or whatever. And that's been a thing we've done pretty consistently. I don't know about y'all if that's something you ever engage in.
Yeah, using external events like we have, as you said, like games tend to align really well with like other nerdy conventions like anime cons, or we have a we used to have a pinball convention in Pittsburgh,
Mm,
Replay, that we went to every year. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist anymore. Another victim of the pandemic, but that was a lot of fun actually, because you'd have like pinball players, and then you'd have like the small like the video game section, and they always go like, "Whoa, this is really cool." But yeah, but as you said, not just like conventions, but we've done like educational meetups, especially for like high schools and that sort of thing. Just going there and talking, and those are always fun because you get people who are really excited. Who, nowadays it's so easy to jump into game development, and you get a lot of kids, especially like who then get encouraged to go because we have like a nice pipeline from going from those events, and then it's like, oh, we want to make a game, but we're not really sure, so we'll go to like the Global Game Jam, and then they go there and then go like, oh, I went to the Global Game Jam, I had a great time, and now I want to join the community and work on something. So they'll join the Discord, and then they'll have fun there, and then they'll come to the in-person meetings eventually. So we've had a few of those people go through that pipeline on our end.
Yeah, that's similar to how it works for us as well. Yeah, do you have any like favorite stories of yours from your time as an organizer of like events that you've hosted that have gone really well, or just like stories of people who you've witnessed like their growth as like becoming a member of your community?
I think most recently we hosted a game jam, which is local but still entirely online. And I know that like sometimes with online jams, it can feel very like impersonal when you create something where you either entirely collaborate with people online and then like whether you have reward, which we didn't do awards or like placements or anything. We just kind of celebrated that the games were done at the end. Sometimes it can feel a little bit like, okay, that just happened, but did it really happen? It just didn't feel like it was an event that I got to participate in. It just kind of existed in this nether space. And so this year we did something different, which is that like basically 30 minutes after the deadline of the jam, we just hosted a little mini Discord hangout where I just streamed every game that everyone made for the jam for like, I think it was like a 3-hour long hangout that went well into the night. And it was just very like, it was just very cozy. It was very nice. Just like every single developer that participated in the jam hung out from like 6 to 9 p.m. And we were all just in the chat, just like hyping each other up, like ignoring all the really bad bugs, ignoring all the really like broken things that inevitably happen during a jam, and everyone's just like, I love that character, or I love that sound design. And for a lot of people, it was the first time they had made a game. It was the first time that they'd gotten to see anyone else play their game. Like I have, some experience with launching games and seeing people play it on Twitch, and I remember how that felt the first time. And this was a nice way to kind of give that experience to hobbyist devs who just made a fun little thing over the weekend, who they never thought anyone was ever going to play it, but then to see like it get streamed, granted in like a Discord server and not just on Twitch, but still it was just cool to give people that opportunity to feel like everyone's here to see the thing that I made and appreciate it. And that's something that I'm excited to do kind of going forward, is just have a little mini celebration. It's entirely online, but it helps people just get a feeling of accomplishment to see it be celebrated in front of others.
Yeah, I think mine is more around people doing things on their own without us hand-holding them. Like we have multiple different co-working groups that meet throughout the week, and most of them are not run by us or any of the board members at all. So it's just really cool to see, this channel of people being like, oh, going to this restaurant tonight. Is anyone going to be there? They're going to have a drawing night. So it's just nice to see people have their own kind of initiative and maybe have that initiative be sparked from, something that we ran and did. And it's just, I am very in awe of those people, because I'm not someone who will just randomly go to a tea shop in one night to meet other people that I haven't met in person yet. So I feel like that part of our community is really cool, and I'm really looking forward to how that transforms our community more in the next coming years.
Yeah, and I guess just to finish off, I feel like Kaylee, I think like running the events is always satisfying personally, and seeing like the natural growth of it. But what's been really cool is like with the Halloween showcase, it's become a thing where we've done it for 5 years now, or 6 years actually. This will be our 7th year, and it's gotten to the point where people will ask us like, "Hey, it's like August. When's the Halloween showcase happening?" And it's like, oh, people are actually anticipating it and putting on their calendars. And it's like, yeah, my kid's really excited to come this year because they had a lot of fun last year. And that was like this previous one we had a dev show off. Well, it was a father-daughter group, and it was because they had previously gone the last year, the last showcase, and she had gotten excited enough about it that this year they're like, oh, we wanted to make a game, and they made like a fun small VR game together. They're like, the dad's a game dev, so it was like a natural, it was sort of a little bit of a shortcut, but it was still really cool to see that progression of someone being inspired and coming to the next showcase with a game in hand.
Yeah, it's so fun to. We had a couple kids come to our showcase, and it was so insanely wild to have, a kid there that enjoys playing video games, play local indie games, or even just like expressing that love and having like a supportive parent there being like, yeah, they like saved up their money to come to this event or something like that. So I feel like, also a plus wanting that idea is just having non-adult presence is sometimes also really cool that you're inspiring this like next generation of local people or, the next wave of local devs coming in.
Yeah, we have parents that bring their kids to game jams and stuff, and like they work together on games, and like the parent will usually do the coding part sometimes, and the kids will do the art or design the levels, and those are always like fun and inspiring to watch. And yeah, we had like a young teenager who is working on a game of his own that comes to our events. He comes down from Vancouver area up in Canada, and uh, has been bringing his game for our events for a couple of years now, and was at six a few 2 or 3 years ago maybe. I don't remember. I lost track. And like Shohei Yoshida actually came through from Sony and like played his game and was like tweeting about it to like his millions of followers or whatever, and it was just like wild that that happened. Like we run our event alongside PAX West, so there's like industry people in town, and that kind of thing happens sometimes. But like we didn't set that up or anything. Like that was all organic. That we just came, and now the that young developer has a connection with Sony, so that's been like really exciting to watch and see that happen. Uh,
All right, we actually don't have time for that last question. You guys have less than a minute left until we got to move over. But James, if you are in our Discord, please hop over to the AMA chat, and I'm sure one of our lovely speakers will be able to jump in and answer you. Do I have a... Yep, so right here is our Discord. If you guys are not in it, please feel free to join it. Also want to do a shout out to Margarita for jumping in and helping to tell about game jams in Latin America. I was messaging her frantically on Discord like, hey! Because she's on our team. She lives in Chile, so she knows everything. But
awesome.
yeah, thank you guys all so very much for your insights today. We all really appreciate it. Up next, we have sustainable game development from a game producer's perspective. So hang tight. We're going to be live with that one in just a few minutes. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you, and we'll see you guys later.
See ya.